And uh oh man. So decided to take a quick little break. You know what I'm saying? Do something, go live real quick while this is on my mind. Got a few things on my mind. So I'm not gonna take long, you guys. Like I said, 15, 20 minutes. It shows that I do. Uh I didn't do nothing. I don't think I did a show last week. No, I didn't do a show last week. I didn't do a show last week. Man, I got it's so much going on, you know what I'm saying, man. When you reach 55, you know, you realize you got things that you're like, damn, man, I only got like a limited time to get something done. So, when you get things done, then you have to step back and take a break. And the good thing about being 55 is as much shit that comes my way or comes your way at 55, if you, did what you're supposed to do, you're prepared for it. So I'm prepared for it. It's just a lot of shit, but I am prepared for it. You know what I'm saying? Mentally and physically, I am prepared for it. So, regardless of it being a lot of shit, hey, at least I'm prepared for it. But anyway, enough of that shit. So 2026 is coming up, and you got to ask yourself, man, when 2026 come up, is boxing going to be, is boxing going to redeem itself? Like, can 2026 revitalize what we've had in such a fucking dead of a year? Like, and I'm just going to be honest, boxing has been so bad in 2025. Like, there's fights I literally wait and I watch it the next day or I'll even read what the fucking results of that fight is. Like, that's how bad boxing has gotten, right? The one fight that I can say that I was up for this year was the Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez, only because I knew how dominant Crawford was going to be. Hell, we even went to Vegas. You guys know this. We went Three Kings Boxing, man. We went to Vegas for this motherfucking fight, right? So we was in Vegas for this fight. So you had that. The first Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn fight, I was up for that. I didn't care for the second one. And props to Mike Wilson of Three Kings Boxing. He did a great article where he talked about how Conor Benn was going to win that fight, and the reasons he gave was what you saw. Chris Eubanks Jr. did not look like he was even in that fight, in that second fight. Chris Eubanks Jr. did not look like he was even, you know what I'm saying? He didn't even look like he was there. There was no urgency. It was I don't know what we saw. But the Chris Eubanks Jr. that won the first fight wasn't the same Chris Eubanks Jr. that we saw in the second fight. And that's why I did a video saying, man, Chris Eubanks, after beating Conor Benn, he should have walked away and retired, right? Conor Benn, of course, Conor Benn called out, the guys at 147. I will believe he wants to fight for a world title when he fights for a world title. I will believe that. I will believe he wants to be a world champion when he fights for a world title. Conor Benn, he chased that bag in that Chris Eubanks Jr. fight. That's the bag he chased. Then on top of that, him going all the way up to 160, trying to get back down to 147, going to be a struggle. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, 2026, man, it has a lot. 2026 got a hell of a job. It's a hell of a job you got to do in 2026, man, to rejuvenate what we've had so far as for such a dead year, in my opinion, in boxing, right? You got the Shakur Stevenson Teofimo Lopez fight. You know what? I want to see that fight, right? So you got that fight, right? You don't know what's going to happen in the heavyweight division. I don't think Usyk, unless you can get a big name or someone to drum, I don't know if Usyk is going to come back, right? So the heavyweight division may be something to look at because you got some good young heavyweights in that heavyweight division. So you got some legs there with these good young heavyweights with the heavyweight division. But can they revitalize that division, right? Terrence Crawford ain't fighting Canelo Alvarez because he wants a big bag. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen, right? Hopefully Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz takes place, but with the way that they're moving, like Virgil Ortiz talking about fighting Earl Spence, which I don't understand why the hell you want to fight a dude that ain't been around in a while, right? So hopefully that. So, like I said, Dimitri Bivol, he had surgery, so we don't know if he's going to come back or what he's going to look like when he come back. Beterbiev, I don't think is with Top Rank anymore, so he's floating out there in obscurity. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. Like, then you got fighters that kind of disappear. Joe, I don't know where Joe Cordina is. He took that L and kind of vanished. And Jared Anderson, he hasn't been the same since his loss to Martin Bacoli, right? So, like I said, man, it's 2026. When you look at 2026, man, it has to can when you looking at potential fights, is there a potential fight out there you think can be that fight that can revitalize boxing? Because in my honest opinion, it needs to be more than just one potential fight. You got to have several potential fights to revitalize the sport of boxing. You know, then of course you got Dana White with Zuffa boxing. He talking about starting Zuffa boxing, which, like I said, I think that's disrespecting the governing bodies in the sport in itself. So I don't know how that's going to freaking work, right? Pro Box I will say this, I kept up with Pro Box, and Pro Box have been they still kind of put together some good fights. So Pro Box, but those are prospects and unknowns trying to become knowns, right? So Pro Box is that fight. Okay, Jerron, like I said, Jerron Ennis needs a scout. That's why he needs Virgil Ortiz. He needs a scout, right? Uh, I thought he did good with Emmanuel Stanionis. I thought that was a good scout. As a matter of fact, Roman Villa and Emmanuel Stanionis, I thought were two good scouts for him. Other people have other things they want to say, which is fine. Like I said, I don't get into it. I don't get into arguments with people. I don't allow motherfuckers to dumb me down. I understand when you don't like somebody, you're gonna say certain things that just don't make no fucking sense sometimes. You're gonna have that double standard when you don't like somebody. That's why I don't let motherfuckers dumb me down. But yeah, that's it, man. 2020, when you're looking at 2026, man, 2026, has to put together some fights that's going to make you want to get back into the sport of boxing. It has to revitalize it. And hopefully it does. I don't know. I just don't know, man. Like I said, you got a lot of uncertainty. Like I said, Top Rank is not even with a major platform. I think you got you got to have Roku TV for Top Rank, so that's not with a major platform. Hell, MVP, although, Amanda Serrano, when she retires, what MVP is going to do, right? Got Alicia Baumgartner, but I mean, who is she gonna fight? You know what I'm saying? Because the people at that weight division she trying to get to, they're gonna disappear. So who's she gonna fight? She should have rematch. What she should have done was she should have entertained that rematch with what's the girl from Top Rank? Michaela Mayer. She should have entertained that, but she didn't. And that kind of, now nobody cares about it. Well, Michaela Mayer is going on to do actually better things. Michaela Mayer is going on to fight better opponents. To be honest with you, she's going on to do better things and fight better opponents. So, I think she's going to fight. I think she just beat Sandy Ryan. There's a chick who's a unified champion who beat Natasha Jonas. I can't think of her name right now. Price. I think her last name, Lauren Price. Lauren Price. Yeah, Lauren Price. So you got Lauren Price, and I think man, that's gonna be a tough fight for Michaela Mayer. Lauren Price ain't no fucking joke. That girl can fight. That girl can box her ass off. So that's gonna be a great fight. And props to Michaela Mayer for even making that fight. Right. So yeah. All right. Now you got Devin Haney, who's gonna be taking on Brian Norman Jr. This weekend. That is on the undercard of Dave Benavidez versus Anthony Yard. And there's a lot of questions about Devin Haney, rightfully so. A lot of questions. Like, people been looking at the interview and they've been saying, Devin Haney don't look the same in the interviews. I don't go off shit like that. Like, I don't look at interviews, because Anthony Joshua looked like he was supremely confident in interviewing Daniel DeBose, and we saw DeBose knock him out. So, that I don't, I don't look at that or get into that, and I don't look at that how they interview. I will say after his last fight against Jose Ramirez, he did look like he looked like a Devin Haney who was like, okay, man, I'm just gonna box and move and box and move. He didn't look he looked like a dude that didn't want to engage. So people saying he looked shell shocked. He looked like a dude that didn't want to engage or at least take that risk. Devin Haney at least would take a risk. Now he's looking like that guy who don't want to take a risk, right? And the problem is, like, we asked him to take, when you got in there with Ryan, and we asked him to take a risk, and he did. We asked him to be aggressive, and he was. And I mean, hell, when you look at the Jojo Diaz fight or the Jorge Linares fight, Devin Haney was very aggressive. The problem is because of what happened with Ryan, and then the heat that he took behind all of that, the heat that he took behind that whole situation and scenario, right, from the lawsuit, and then when he got the Ryan Garcia fight, Ryan is the one that laid the egg, but Devin, took a lot of the criticism because of the way he fought versus the way, for the way he fought. So much so to the point, the fact that Ryan Garcia got his ass blasted by Rolando Romero just went by people. So he's going to take on Brian Norman Jr. Now Norman Jr. thinking he's going to knock him out. Brian Norman Jr. thinking, Devin is done and this is the time, right? Because Brian Norman Jr. and them, they could have fought Jaron Ennis, man. They could have fought Jaron Ennis. They didn't want to. Regardless of whatever Timothy Bradley tried to say about Boots leaving the division when the division was getting hot, the reality was Boots had outgrown the damn division, and he did. Hence why, if he couldn't get a unification, he was like, I'm out, because the reality is, if he makes a title defense, he has to adhere by the 10-pound rehydration clause for the IBF. But when you fight for unification, he didn't have to do that, which is why he looked so much better in that Stanionis fight. And then, of course, when the Devin Haney situation came around, well, Haney was trying to fight him, but Boots and him was obligated to go to 100, had already had a fight together for him to go to 154 pounds. Like, you know what I'm saying? He was already getting his body ready for 154, right? So, and so you look at that, and it's like, which Devin Haney is going to show up when he takes on Brian Norman Jr.? Is it going to be that Devin Haney that we saw that fought Jorge Linares, that we saw against Vasil Lomachenko? You know what I'm saying? Or it's going to be that Devin Haney who fought Jose Ramirez. If it's the Devin Haney that fought Jose Ramirez, that's going to be a bad look for Devin. It is. It's going to be a bad look for... Listen, at the end of the day, you do have to win. Like Floyd Mayweather, pretty boy Floyd Mayweather was an exciting fighter because he was an offensive fighter. Right? Money Mayweather is the guy that was the defensive fighter. People forget there was two Floyds. There was Pretty Boy and there was Money. Just like Lennox Lewis. There was a Lennox Lewis with the box, and then there was Lennox Lewis with the dreads. Right? Lennox Lewis with the box was before Emmanuel Stewart, but he was a good offensive fighter. But Lennox Lewis with the dreads was a superior boxer. Right? And people forget, like I said, there was Lennox Lewis with the box, and then there was Lennox Lewis with the dreads. But that's the thing, If you're not, you have to give fans a reason to want to come see you. Because Devin Haney versus Brian Norman Jr. should be a main event fight. The fact they're putting it on an undercard tells you everything they already know about from the money standpoint and the money aspect of all of this, right? Because the reality is, if the money was there, this fight would stand alone by itself, just like when he fought Ryan Garcia. Like, when was the last time Devin Haney was on an undercard? You know what I'm saying? Hell, he was on the undercard of Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero, but that was only because he figured, hey, I'm going to get, the Ryan Garcia rematch. And he didn't get it. Now he's on another undercard where he's fighting Brian Norman. So Devin Haney got to put something together, because understand something. You went from being a main event to being a co-main event fighter. That's not a good look. And that's only because if Devin Haney would have won against Jose Ramirez and blasted Jose Ramirez the fuck out, blasted Jose Ramirez the fuck out, he wouldn't be on this undercard right now. Him versus Brian Norman Jr. would be a main event. Right? And it would. It would be a main event. Nobody knows enough about Brian Norman Jr. to want to take that shot. Right? So which Devin Haney's going to show up? It better be the Devin Haney who wants to not just win the fight, but show everybody, hey, I'm back. I'm that dude that y'all was talking about when y'all was putting me on the pound for pound list. You know what I'm saying? I'm that dude that everybody was looking at that y'all was saying, hey, look at Floyd's former protege. Like, I'm back. I'm that dude. Right? And at the end of the day, that's what he's gonna have to do. He's gonna have to fight. Like, he's gonna have to bring something. He's going to have to bring something against Brian Norman, man. He can't bring that same energy he brought against Jose Ramirez. Otherwise, like I say, it's going to be a bad look. And if he think the criticism was heavy, then it's going to be even heavier now, right? Even if he wins, but he does not look like like people think he should look in that victory. Because what do we always say? Sometimes you got to win and look good, later. But the reality is, in today's climate, no, you got to look good regardless. You got to look good regardless. Like, when you don't have that push behind you, like Ryan Garcia can look good, look bad, it don't fucking matter. He got that push behind him, right? Hence why he's talking about some, he wants to come. He can come right in and fight Mario Barrios. Ryan Garcia should not be getting the fucking title after what we saw against Rolando Romero, and then you taking another break because of your mental state. You should not be getting the fucking title fight. You should work your way back up the ranks. But Ryan Garcia has that push behind him, and Ryan Garcia, whether we like him or not, he will put together. He's an exciting fighter to watch because he's explosive. Devin Haney needs that. Devin Haney needs that. Right? Devin Haney don't have that same backing. So you got to get in there and you got to put something together, bro. And that's just real talk. Listen, boxing is full of guys who win fights. But if you're not winning fight impressively, no one talks about you. Remember Dimitri Bivol? Dimitri Bivol was winning fights, but nobody thought he was going to beat Canelo Alvarez because he never looked impressive. Then he beats Canelo Alvarez, and then that's when the train picked up. Then, of course, he looked impressive after beating Canelo Alvarez. I think he beat Gilberto Ramirez, and he looked impressive in that Gilberto Ramirez fight. He looked impressive, right? Then, of course, we got what we got against Beterbiev, right? So he did that. But boxing is full of guys who win. But you have to look impressive, or you have to have a gimmick, or you have to have something to make people want to come see you. Money Mayweather was always called a boring fighter, but you watched him because he projected the persona of no one can beat me. So you watched because you wanted to see motherfuckers beat him, right? Think about that, right? Pretty Boy never got to the level that Money Mayweather got. Because Pretty Boy Floyd was a very aggressive offensive fighter. People forget about that, right? Money Mayweather was nowhere near as offensive aggressive as Pretty Boy was. But Money Mayweather, from a success standpoint, was more successful because he found something that worked for him, right? So, same thing with Devin Haney. You got to find something, bro. Like whether we like Tank Davis or don't like Tank Davis. People, even after that egg he laid in against Lamont Roach, people watch Tank Davis because at any point in time he detonates that left hand, it's going to be a knockout. And we all know that at any point in time, when he detonates that freaking left hand, he's going to be a knockout. So you're watching him for that, right? And like I said, Ryan Garcia has had more fights where he was explosive in his fights versus the egg he laid when it came to, Rolando Romero and then, of course, Gervonta Davis. He laid eggs in both those fights. Devin Haney has to do, like Devin Haney had it going for him. He has to get it back, right? So which Devin Haney going to show up? I hope it's the one who wants to remind us that he was that dude. If that Devin Haney don't show up, it's over. I'm serious, it's over. Even if he wins, it's going to be over. Because today's boxing, the atmosphere of today's boxing turns on you real quick. They don't care about you winning. They care about you entertaining us. They care about you exciting us. They don't care about that. I should not get more entertainment out of listening to your father argue with people than I am watching you fight. And that's just the reality. That's just the climate of what boxing is. So Dev got to get back. He has to shake that shell shock shit off of him. And he has to get back. If he winds up knocking Brian Norman out, that's a huge feather in his cap, and that's a shift in the right direction. So let's see what happens, man. Hopefully that Devin Haney show up. All right, last but not least, are UK fans gonna keep that same energy for Fabio Wardley that they always seem to have when it comes to Jerron Boots Ennis? And that is because whenever you mention Jerron Boots Ennis, right, to a UK person, because, you talk Conor Ben and all that, they say, oh, the email champ. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Fabio Wardley is going to be an email champ. He's going to be elevated by the WBO to champion. Now, mind you, same thing happened to Daniel DeBose. Because people forget, Daniel DeBose was the IBF interim champion because he fought Philip Horkovich, and he beat Philip Horkovich for the IBF interim title. And then when Usyk dropped the belt, he was elevated to champion. That's when he wound up fighting Anthony Joshua, right? So are they going to keep that same energy because the same things happen again? Usyk is once again making another, UK C-level fighter. And I know they're going to get mad at me for calling him that. I believe Fabio Wardley's a C-level fighter. I need to see him fight B-level guys before I can say if he's up of that level. He's a C++ level fighter, in my opinion. Joseph Parker, I never bought into Joseph Parker's comebacks. I never bought into that comeback. I just never really did, right? And I know people don't want to hear that. They goes, oh, he fought Martin Bacoli. Yeah, he pulled in a Martin Bacoli that was, overweight. And now that's no excuse because he's supposed to be ready. But that Martin Bacoli was clearly not the same Martin Bacoli that Jared Anderson saw, right? You get credit for the win, but I do have to look at the opponent you fought. And that Martin Bacoli he fought was not the same Martin Bacoli that fought Jared Anderson. Jared Anderson wished he saw that Martin Bacoli, right? Then, of course, he beat Deontay Wilder. Well, Deontay Wilder was done. Deontay Wilder was done. We all know that. He couldn't pull the trigger no more. So you beat Deontay Wilder, couldn't pull the trigger. And I think he also beat, did he? No. Ajit Caballero beat Zilli Zhang. So I never bought into the whole Joseph Parker comeback thing, right? But Fabio Wardley was getting outboxed. He just happened to knock this dude out in the 11th round. He was, that youthful energy was just there for him. And he knocked this motherfucker out in the 11th round, right? So he was, to me, he's a C plus level fighter. Daniel DeBose is a C plus level fighter to me. He always was a C plus level fighter. He never beat nobody. And and that Anthony Joshua he beat, I give him credit for it, right? And I definitely do give him credit for it, right? But okay. But at the end of the day, are UK fans gonna keep that same energy and call Fabio Wardley an email champion? Because whenever it comes to Jerron Boots Ennis, motherfuckers have no problem reminding me or anybody how Jerron is an email champion, which a lot of fighters was fucking email champions. Gennady Golovkin was an email champion, all right? A lot of fighters have been email champions. A lot of fucking fighters have been email champions. If you look at how the WBA has moved, if you are a WBA interim title, there was a WBA cruiserweight. He was Armenian. This motherfucker went from being interim champion elevated all the way up to super champion, and did not fight not one motherfucker. He didn't fight one motherfucking person, and he was an email champion. So a lot of motherfuckers have been email champions. Like I said, Gennady Golovkin was a fucking email champion. A lot of motherfuckers have been email champions, right? So I'm just curious. I'm very curious if they are going to keep that same energy with Fabio Wardley that they have for Jerron Ennis. You can't say shit about Jerron Ennis without them saying email champ. And to me, honestly, I couldn't be an email champ. Why? Because I would play that up. I would say, yeah, you know why I'm an email champ? Because the dude I wanted to fight was a pussy and didn't want to fight me. Like, that's exactly what I would say. I said, yeah, I'm an email champ because the guy I wanted to fight didn't want to fight me. He was a pussy and didn't want to fight me. See, I would play that email crap up. I'll say, okay, well, you think I'm an email champ. Tell that motherfucker I want to fight to bring his ass over here and get some of this. Instead of calling me an email champ, why don't you get in the ass of that dude and tell him, hey, man, come over here and get some of this. Right? But I do not believe. Now, I'm not going to go out on circuits and check to see. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to check to see if they're doing it or they're not doing it. I'm just saying I want them to keep that same energy. I want all fans, period, keep that same energy across the board. Don't play that favoritism card. Don't play that because he's my country. Don't play, keep that same energy across the board. If you're going to call somebody a duck, call them a duck. But call them a duck all the way across the board. Right? I've heard people say, "Oh man, Jerron, Jerron Boots Ennis, he ducked this, he ducked that." Yeah, well, I seen Adam Azim duck Dalton Smith. He dropped that Commonwealth belt and didn't fight Dalton Smith. I've seen him do that. Right? And listen, this, and I'm not sitting here trying to bag on UK fans. I like the UK farming. I like the UK system on how you go through the pro ranks, because you have to become, Commonwealth and all of that. And then like the product that we get like after they go through that domestic circle, the product that you get, that's when you find, okay, who's ready for world level and who isn't. So I do like how they do that. Perfect example. people forget Billy Joe Saunders and Chris Eubanks Jr. had to fight coming up. Right? That fight had to happen. Groves had to. I remember George Groves. I believe he fought. What's the boy name that had that pretty looking ass sister? Goddamn. Chris Eubanks Jr. beat him too. He had that gorgeous looking ass sister. I can't remember. James DeGale. James DeGale. I remember George Groves had to fight James DeGale coming up through that. So I do like, Dylan White and Anthony Joshua. So I do like how they do it. It's just UK fans have gotten somewhat on like, okay, hold on, wait a minute now, slow down. You know what I'm saying? Let's not get on the ridiculous side. And not all of them, but they still not as bad as Crawford fans, and they definitely not as bad as Pacquiao fans, in my honest opinion, or hell, even Floyd fans. But they can be there at a certain point where you're like, hey, yo, hold on, man, wait a minute, man, kill that. Right? Hey, man, hold on, man, wait a minute, man, kill that for a second here, bro. Kill that. Stop, kill that for a second. Because when you talk to them and when you argue with them, or you trying to debate them, oh man, you'll see that bias come out. You'll definitely see that bias come out, right? And I know some of and I know some of my UK guys who I'm cool with. They may take offense to this. Hey man, listen, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, keep that same energy, brother. Keep that same. I want you to refer to Fabio Wardley as an email champ with that same vigor and that same vowel in your voice when it comes to Jerron Boots Ennis. Like, I want you to do that, right? Seriously, I want you to do that. I want you to keep that same energy and that same vigor when it comes to that. Will it happen? Let's see. I hope it does. Like, that will restore my faith in boxing. Because like I said, we've had eras of boxing fans where there are certain eras where the fans were just fucking ridiculous. Like I said, Floyd, you had, people, what they call them, Floyd tarts. You had, Flomos. I'm sorry. It was Pack tarts and Flomos. And that fan base between them two was just, oh my God, it was just stupid. You couldn't have an objective discussion with, if you was a Floyd fan, you couldn't have an objective discussion with them. If you was a Pacquiao fan, you couldn't have an objective discussion with them. Same thing with Crawford fans. When it came to Jerron Boots Ennis, you could not have an objective discussion with these people. Like, wait a minute, hold on, man. How is Jerron Ennis wrong for wanting to fight the top guy in a division he's fighting in? How was he wrong for that? Now, you can sit there and say from a financial standpoint, Terrence Crawford, from a financial standpoint, gets nothing out of that. Okay, fine. And I understand that. But don't sit up and say the man is wrong because he wants to fight the dude that's holding the fucking belt in the division he's in. How is he wrong? That makes no sense to me. It makes no sense at all to me. And then, of course, Canelo fans was another era we went through. Oh, David Benavidez has done nothing. David Benavidez has done nothing, but yet you're okay with Canelo fighting Edgar Berlanga and Jaime Munguia, who's done less than nothing than David fucking Benavidez? Like, really? That's what y'all want to do? Y'all really want to do that? So much so that Canelo fans was okay with the fact that Canelo just wasn't going to fight David Benavidez. They're okay with that. And now that Terrence Crawford has beaten Canelo Alvarez, there's no point in David Benavidez fighting him. And like David Benavidez even himself said, well, hey, listen, Crawford did what I was going to do, so there's no point in me fighting the dude now. And to David Benavidez's credit, he didn't wait around at 168 pounds. He went to 175, where Bivol and Beterbiev was up there, the two most dangerous light heavyweights. He went up there where they were, right? Wanting to get a title fight, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I think Benavidez might be an email champ. I think so. I think Benavidez might be an email champ because Benavidez I think it was the WBC interim, and Bivol dropped the belt. So I think Benavidez, as a matter of fact, I think Benavidez was an email champ. See, I have no problem with it because boxing has always been that way. Like saying the word email champ like it's some kind of like disgraceful tag. Boxing has always been like that. The sport of boxing, if you have followed boxing, interim champions have always been elevated when champions leave or when champions go in recess. When you get guys that go in recess, Janibek is an email champion. Remember, Janibek was the interim champion and Dimitri Andrade was the WBO champion. Well, when Andrade was ordered to fight Janibek, Andrade moved up because he was chasing Canelo to 168. and Janet Beck became the fucking email champion. But nobody said nothing about that. But every time you've had boxing has always been that way. Though. That's the thing. People it kills me if people don't get that. You know, now we use the term email champ like it's a disgraceful tag. Well, if you follow boxing, it's always been that way for quite a while. Go back to the WB when you had the regular and the super, and then you had the interim. You'll find a lot of interim champions in the WBA was elevated. You'll find a lot of interim champions in the WBC was elevated. The IBF. You find a lot of these guys was elevated because that's what the sport did. And it was never a big deal or a problem. Now, Teofimo Lopez started that with Devin Haney, but Devin Haney was already a champion who went into recess, right? And then, of course, they created that bullshit franchise tag shit. And then when Devin Haney came back, because we had the 2020, so Devin Haney came back because he got injured. He was champion in recess. Devin Haney came back, and then he was reinstated as full champion. And Teofimo Lopez started the whole email champ thing. But the reality is, all of these motherfuckers are email champs because you get a goddamn email to tell you you're fighting for a fucking title. When you really think about it, all of these people are email champs. Why? Because you receive an email from the organization letting you know you're fighting for the title. You receive an email letting you know a purse bid had been ordered. And whether you're elevated to champion or elevated to fight the champion, you receive an email for that. And it's crazy to me how now it's changed from that to, as it's a disgraceful tag. So I want, keep that same energy. Fabio Wardley, email champ. Keep that energy, baby. Keep that energy. Keep it. And then, of course, there's two fights I think Fabio, I think what's going to happen with Fabio Wardley is there's two fights I'm looking at. Queensberry, Frank Warren probably had to be all smiles because you got Fabio Wardley versus Moses Atuma. And I think that's going to be a big fight in the UK in 2026. I did an article about that on Three Kings Boxing. He may wind up fighting Filip Horkovich first. But I guarantee in the summer of 2026, if he fights Filip Horkovich, and he's gonna beat Filip Horkovich. I don't have no confidence in Filip Horkovich. Moses Atuma and Fabio Wardley, look for that to be a huge fight in the UK in 2026. Frank, and like it makes no sense for Frank Warren not to make that fight because when you look at the ranking system, Frank Warren got all the top 5 guys that are ranked. Frank Warren has all top 5 of them, right? It's Lawrence Okoli, it's who is it? It's Lawrence Okoli, Zilly Zhang, Daniel Dubois, Moses Atuma, and Filip Horkovich. Zhang and Dubois is out. They're out because they took L's. So, but all right, man, let me get up out of here. UK, keep that energy, baby. I want to see y'all call Fabio Wardley an email champ. I want to see y'all do that. You know what I'm saying? Do that. Keep that same energy and do that shit all the way across the board. Some of y'all will, some of y'all won't. Some of y'all actually gonna have a lot of shit you're gonna want to say to me about it. But I've been consistent on telling people, hey man, you got to keep that same energy all the way over the place. Right? But all right, man, I'm out of here. Appreciate everybody. Let me see who's in here. Eric, what's up? YSM. What up? What up? What up? He said they will not. I hear you, man. Mr. Black Hat. A few other people in here. I don't feel like scrolling all the way back. He got to do something, tired of hearing how great he's supposed to be. Yeah, I know, right? They talking about Devin Haney. Yeah. But all right, man. Hey, look here, man. I'm going to get on about here, man. I'm going to holler at y'all some other, shit, today is Wednesday. So if I don't holler at y'all about Friday, I'll probably get at y'all after that fight. I'm going to try to holler at Friday because I want to do a David Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde prediction video because David Benavidez, man, anybody out there in the UK want to bet me on Benavidez versus Yarde, please email me and we can bet. I will bet my retirement and my 401k. He beats Anthony Yarde. May even stop this dude. Seriously. And that's not me knocking on Yarde. It's just that if you look at Yarde, Anthony Yarde is not the same guy no more. Like he barely beat London Arthur in a third fight. He's underperformed his last couple fights. Right? And he has not yet addressed his stamina issues. So going off it, which is what we do, right? If I go off his last 2-3 performances, Anthony Yarde does not look like the beast from the East. He ain't look like that guy. He has not looked like that guy. And that's why I think David Benavidez beats this dude. He may even stop him. Right? And I know everybody likes to say, well, Anthony Yarde's got power. He's got power. David Benavidez comes across to me as one of those dudes. You're going to need more than power to just beat him. You're going to need a little bit more than that. Like, mental makeup is something a lot of people don't value or measure when they measure in character. They don't measure mental makeup. When they measure character, everybody talk about heart, but mental makeup is key, right? That's why I be on Ryan Garcia so hard. He doesn't have the mental makeup. He's shown it to us twice, right? And I'm looking at Devin Haney with the same eyeball too. Like, oh, I'm looking at your mental makeup. I'm looking at with that same eyeball. So, but anyway, man, look. I went 5 minutes over what I supposed to go. I'm out, y'all. I got to go. Peace.